The cold wind howled through the small town of Fairview, rustling the brittle autumn leaves along the cracked pavement. The sky, smeared with dark gray clouds, threatened rain, but few in town paid any attention. Life moved slowly here, and for most, the days blurred together in predictable monotony. But not for Eleanor Grayson. At 95 years old, she had lived through war, heartbreak, and loss. A decorated veteran of World War II, Eleanor had once commanded respect wherever she went. Now she was just another elderly woman, ignored by most, pitied by some, and to a select few seen as easy prey. The trouble had started 3 weeks ago. It began subtly, motorcycle engines roaring past her house late at night, the loud revving tearing through her sleep. At first she ignored it. But then the notes appeared. Scraps of paper slipped under her door. "Old lady, time's up. Leave before it's too late. This is our town now." At first, Eleanor dismissed them as a cruel joke played by kids with too much time on their hands. She had seen far worse threats in her lifetime. But when she woke one morning to find her porch defaced with crude graffiti, "Get out" painted in thick, dripping red, she knew this was no childish prank. She didn't scare easily, but something about the way the bikers lingered outside her home made her uneasy. They weren't just reckless riders looking for cheap thrills. They were waiting. Watching. She had been in worse situations. Surviving behind enemy lines had taught her how to read people. These men weren't just harassing her for fun. They wanted something from her. And she was determined to find out what. The afternoon sun hung low, casting long shadows as Eleanor locked up the local grocery store. She never needed much, just a few cans of soup, some tea, and a fresh loaf of bread. Her cane tapped softly against the concrete as she made her way down the street, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. She wasn't alone. A group of 5 bikers leaned against their motorcycles near the gas station across the street. Leather jackets, dark sunglasses, boots scuffed from years of travel. They weren't locals. Eleanor had lived in Fairview long enough to know every face in town, and these men were strangers. One of them, a broad-shouldered brute with a thick beard, tilted his head toward her and smirked. "She don't look so tough," he murmured to the man next to him, loud enough for Eleanor to hear. She didn't flinch. Didn't react. That's what they wanted, for her to be scared. But she wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Another biker, younger, with a snake tattoo coiling up his neck, cracked his knuckles. "Bet she'll break easy." Eleanor exhaled slowly and continued on her way. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her cane tighter, but not from fear. From anger. That night, as she sat in her modest living room, the television flickering in the dim light, the sound came again. The low growl of motorcycles circling her house. A deliberate show of intimidation. She sipped her tea and listened. It wasn't just noise. It was a message. A reminder that they were in control. She set her cup down, her movements slow, deliberate. Then, with the precision of someone who had spent her youth following orders and executing missions, she picked up the old rotary phone on her side table and dialed a number she hadn't used in decades. The line rang once. Twice. Then a voice, deep and steady, answered. "Grayson?" Eleanor's lips curled into a thin, knowing smile. "I need a favor." The following morning the town was different. There was a stillness that hadn't been there the day before. The bikers still loitered outside the diner, laughing loudly, shoving each other, acting as if they owned the streets. But they didn't know what was coming. And Eleanor? She was more than ready. The knock at her door came just before noon. A solid, measured sound, 3 firm raps against the wood. Eleanor pushed herself up from her chair and opened the door. Standing before her was a man she hadn't seen in over 40 years. Tall, broad-shouldered, his hair silver but his stance still sharp. He wore a dark coat, and though he carried no weapon, Eleanor knew he didn't need one. "Eleanor," he greeted, his voice the same deep rumble she remembered. "Dawson," she replied. "Took you long enough." He chuckled. "Had to round up some old friends." From the street, 3 other figures emerged, moving with the precision of men who had seen battle. Their eyes held the same steel resolve Eleanor had once known in her youth. These were not just old friends. They were the last remnants of something much bigger. Dawson tilted his head toward the bikers across the street. "These the ones causing you trouble?" Eleanor nodded. "They think they own this town. They think they can scare me." Dawson's expression darkened. "They're about to learn otherwise." The sun had barely set when the bikers realized they were being watched. At first they shrugged it off. But then the watching turned into following. The same way predators stalk their prey. By midnight one of the bikers had vanished. By dawn, another had left